Let's know what's up. Boy. All right, y'all. Welcome to a new episode of the Bonnet Chronicles. It is October 1st, 2021. There is a lot to talk about, but tonight's subject is a serious one, and I want to start it off by thanking everybody who reached out. I've been taking a bit of a social media break from my mental health, and speaking of which, I am going to start doing more mental health vlogs. I did not feel like it was making any headway or worth the effort in doing it. But a lot of people have reached out and said they did appreciate it. I think my struggle with it is how much of myself I really want to reveal versus just dealing with people who don't understand mental health, who think they're experts because they read something or they know somebody, over people who have diagnosed me with what I have, who I trust because for a long time, a lot of things that I did and a lot of the ways I felt didn't make sense until I got diagnosed. So I know a lot of people who follow me get uneasy when I make it clear that I'm a diagnosed sociopath. I know some people get uneasy when I talk openly about my schizoaffective disorder, but I don't care. I don't do this for your comfort. I do it because so many of you dehumanize the words and you throw it around like an insult without thinking about the millions of us who live with mental health problems. And if I can make it clear that I do have these diagnoses, that you obviously don't understand these diagnoses, that many people, especially people who live in a society where hatred and ignorance and apathy rule, deal with sociopathic tendencies, which is just a way of us not fitting into societal norms. Maybe there'll be more understanding and less people assuming that only serial killers and evil people can be sociopathic. So, yeah, I just wanted to start off with that because it is a bone for me and I need to pick it because too many people, for everyone that reached out to say thank you for speaking up, there were those who still don't believe it because they believe whatever I put on Twitter is all of who I am. And I get it. I put on a very nice face online because it's easy for me to. I can type just about any word that comes to my head. Feeling what I put out is a lot different than what I put out. And I wish more people understood that, but I'm not going to let anybody close enough to where I care anyway. I just needed you to know that me speaking up on my mental health was more to put a human face on it than anything else. And if you don't understand that, it's on you, not me. But I know that this week has been really rough for those of us who have survived sexual assault and Black women in general. It has been really rough. Even though R. Kelly got convicted for what he did to young women, but it was mostly racketeering because money always seems to be more harshly dealt with within our justice system than anything to do against women. But what pissed me off, what made me have to stop being on Twitter, especially, was people having the opinion that somehow people like Aaliyah, rest her soul, and other young Black women who R. Kelly predatored on were somehow being fast. Somehow it was their fault that society hypersexualizes us but tells us we're ugly, tells us we're too grown or too fast for the way we look and dress, but don't want to tell people that rapists will pick you out whether you're dressed like a tomboy, which I was when I was assaulted, versus any feature they want to sexualize, whether it's your ass, your hips, your breasts, your thighs. It doesn't matter. It is something about you that they want to take, dominate, and they love it when you resist. So I am really sick of people trying to give the power of what happens to people who are predatorized onto the victims. We don't seek out being targeted. And it's not fair, especially the Black women who are still trying to find and hold our place in a society that constantly demeans, devalues, and diminishes our accomplishments, to be told that somehow we deserve to be the victim of predators. So yeah, I took some time away, and I'm gonna continue from my own stress levels not to put up with the fuckery, because if you aren't fighting each other on Twitter, you're just spreading that kind of bullshit. And it's tiring. But another thing that I seen going on that's gonna be the main meat of tonight is talks about bigotry and racism, and so many of you get that nonsense twisted. So many of you think that you understand the differences, but you don't. Because you seem to think that people who show bigotry are just racist and vice versa. Racism comes with structural power. That's why we tell people all the time, whether it sounds right to you or not, black and non considered white, because I have to put in that considered white people, cannot be racist. Racism holds financial, structural, systemic societal power. They can declare whether a neighborhood is a safe neighborhood versus an undesirable red line neighborhood. They can declare whether a school gets funding. They declare whether a person can get a loan or not. That is the reality of systemic racism. Thank you for the subscribe, Deacon. Welcome to the chat. But what people don't understand about racism is the power dynamics. The fact that racism has held its hold over our society since almost its inception. But in America, it is a forefront to why we can't get our shit together. It is a forefront along with other isms, but it is the most prevalent ism. It was why we could have a foreign nation interfere in an election, stoke the ties of it. Why you see old white ladies who should be somebody's grandma baking cookies out there yelling horrible things because they were raised to believe that somehow their lack of melanin gives them the right to a better life, gives them a right to better areas, gives them a right to better education, to more stable economic rights. And when you have a country that keeps that foundation of fuckery, and the people who have to suffer from it has to live with it, there is a difference. Now, within that structure, you have the people who suffer from that racism that develop their own biases. And whether it's against racist people, which to me is justifiable at times, but against others, that's bigotry. When you have black people who decide that they want to be anti LGBT because somehow the Bible supposedly says so, or they can't stand Asians or Hispanic or anybody who isn't black, that's bigotry. That's ignorance too, but the only power that holds and how it makes the other people who they're utilizing that bigotry feels. There's no structural dynamic to it because, for the most part, bigotry can't really hold people back. You can see a person as bigot and just keep it moving. It is when that bigotry holds societal structural power that it becomes racism. And too many people don't want to speak like this because they know the power that racism holds. They understand that if they keep that benign bigotry going, keep people muddied, want people arguing over what is what, then we won't be able to tackle actual racism. Because racism directly affects black people. And when it directly affects black people and you're racism adjacent or you're an acceptable white race, looking at some of you Italians, looking at some of you Irish who have a history in this country being persecuted, who have a history in this country being treated like shit, but the moment you were let on that bus of white supremacy, you didn't look back. And some of the most nastiest fuckers you used to be spit on in this country by the so-called white people. But the moment they gave you that pound in the head, you could not wait to turn your back. And it's sickening because there's also a history of Italians who went down to the South, took on the Klan. There's a history of Irish people who had our backs too. But you don't want to talk about them because your adjacency to white supremacy have given you a privilege bubble that you don't want to burst and you don't want to be let out of. And you are a problem because you not only allow the benign bigotry that keeps us from confronting actual racism, but your adjacency to white supremacy that so-called privilege doesn't even let you see that you're being looked down upon too. That they still consider you other, but you're useful. And I say this to the also model minorities out there too. You don't feel the direct brunt that black people do. You don't feel the direct racism, but you get your jabs. You get it when people want to mock your ethnicity, if you're Arabic or Native or Asian. You get it if you felt different or other, but it's still not enough for you to understand when the laws are set against you. When they literally created patrols that became the police that literally snuff out our lives because we look like threats. Yet, anytime there are calls for unity because something has happened to you, or you start realizing that bigotry is affecting your communities, you want us to speak up. It's tiring. So, if you want our backup, you need to see what's going on with us. And I know it's not easy because, like I said, there are plenty of people who suffer from racism that also have bigotry. It's a mess. But if you're going to base your allyism on the fact that some of us aren't bigots and not realize that the only way we're going to stop this is for you to help no matter what, then I don't need you. We don't need you. I don't have the time to coddle you versus every person that is ignorant. I only have time to work with people who want to move past that. It's exhausting, Deacon. I'm telling you, so many people want to muddy the talks because they realize that if you get people confused about what ism is what, nobody can confront the actual beef. And I'm sorry, when I look at all the isms, they're bad. But racism directly impacts me and mine, and it has been killing us far too long. It is the reason why most of our ancestors were either dragged off another continent and brought here, or completely slaughtered out and put on reservations in their Alaskan vestiges. It is a reason why the people who came over here to make a new life for themselves were subjected to slums and misery and apathy. It's the reason why during World War II, instead of opening our doors to people who were subjected to horrors of their own country's legality, we decided to turn our back until the last minute. We allowed horrors to go on because of hatred. But I'm sorry, I can't take on everybody else's fight when my people are dying still legally. They are legally being lynched. Our kids can't even do regular things that kids do. Living in our neighborhoods come at a risk. If too many of us live in the neighborhood, it's declared low income. Heavy patrol by the people who can legalize lynch us. If we move into an area where there's not enough of us, we're looked at like you don't belong here. You get the neighborhood Karen coming up on our property, hem hawing and nitpicking everything we do. That is the effects of racism. So I'm sorry. As much as I want to be there for people who experience hate, and I try to be, my fight is against the stuff that's killing me and mine. And if you can't understand that, if that bothers you, keep it moving. That's another thing that I need to confront tonight about allyism. Too many of you want me to move my gaze. You want me to focus on your pet peeves. You want me to look past somebody famous that you like Miss Bette Midler or Alyssa Milano or whatever other white feminists when they come out their face and say something fucking foolish. And I'm tired of that nonsense too. I don't have time for their benign bigotry. And I don't have time to stand people that are trash because you like something that they made or they acted in or they sung. It's tiring trying to navigate the realities of my situation versus your fragility because you don't want to think that somebody you admired might have garbage and trash ideals, that they can't let go of their privilege. But if you're being real, if you're being correct on how you come with anti-racism, you know that there is no tolerance for any kind of bigotry whatsoever. I might not actively fight with every group, but I don't actively engage in bigotry if I can help it. And I'm real on what I used to condone. That's another problem I see with people who want to claim anti-racism, want to claim anti-bigotry. Y'all don't even want to admit to the stuff that you used to condone. You don't want to see. You'll say things like, I don't want to see color, or I feel guilty for, or I'm your ally, and you're loud. Most people who are anti anything are too busy listening, looking inside, and realizing where they came from. When I grew up, there are a lot of anti shit going on. Growing up in the church, especially anti LGBT stuff, especially anti trans. It was nothing for comedians to dress up like women. Misogyny is a big one, and eternal misogyny seems to run rampant within my community. The hate of women is so deep within us that some people just don't understand it. And it's why our society is always at odds. When you look at another human being as less than, whether you feel that way or not, because society has condoned that for so long that sometimes you don't even realize you're doing it. But when you look at a man and think, oh, they need to be the leader of stuff. And when you look at a woman and think, oh, they need to be the caretaker, and you don't understand that those roles are something we can do no matter what our gender, you are contributing to the societal fuckery that keeps us unstable. We have to work on our isms, the sexism, the misogyny, the assuming that being of one gender means you can't show emotions at all, or that you only show emotions. As a sociopath, I tell people my emotions do not come out the way normal people's do. I've accepted that about myself. But what I realize is that a lot of people assume that men can't have emotion at all and that women are somehow too emotional. And we have seen over the last few years, especially just watching politics, that that's bullcrap. Emotions are what we make of them. And telling a gender, especially, that they have to keep their emotions in, that showing any kind of sadness, happiness, joy, anger is somehow bad for them, and making them bottle it up is why so many lose their shit all the time. And why so many develop antisocial personalities. We have to really look at the root. Exactly. The church is really where I've seen so many of those isms played benignly, telling young girls that, oh, you need to prepare yourself to be perfect wives. You need to look the other way when somebody's doing something wrong, because it's fine, but it's not fine. Having people who literally raised you as family members, even if they weren't directly related, then looking at you once you develop, and you're supposed to just look the other way. The lechery, the lies, the way they teach us has to stop. And being able to call it out would be lovely. But like I said, we have a big ass problem that's really directly affecting all of us. And despite what the few who get paid to be tap dancing for the ones who really want to hold white supremacy say, it's deadly. It's been deadly since its inception. And if we don't confront racism first, we can't begin to clean out our house because it's all cluttered by that one solid block of hatred that so many of us try to chip away at, but we're constantly being distracted by other things. I look at it every day and say, what would a world without racism look like? What would a world just with humans just vying to live, learn, grow, and figure out not only the earth that we're on, but why we're here and why things are around us? But we can't even get that way because the people who have created power structures understand that the only way for them to hold on to that feeling of power is to keep people fighting each other and hating each other. And for some odd reason, people who look like me, people who look like you, Deacon, people who look like so many of us have bear the brunt of so many different people's hatred, so many people's ignorance. And I'm not acting like black people are the golden children, that we don't have our bad, we don't have our evil, but to act like we're the only ones, to act like when you think of criminals that you can only see our skin first, Are you kidding me? Everybody has a potential for good. Everybody has a potential for evil, but only one ethnicity globally is looked upon as bad for some reason, or less than, or savage. And we have condoned that thought way too much. That's why I tell people, when you make assumptions about the continent of Africa, so many people still do this. Deacon and I had to talk about it a few months ago about that misconception about Africa, where people think that people are still living off the land in huts and need your stinky ass shoes. Africa is one of the most developing continents in the world. Why? Because unlike some of you racist idiots, they've been working with China. There are cities in Africa that are way more developed than New York, than LA, and other places. Yeah, they still have rural parts. Most countries do. But for the most part, a lot of times they will go to different countries, get degrees, bring those degrees back home, and flourish. But some of y'all don't want to think like that because you still believe that somehow being from Africa, being African in any way, means we don't have the propensity to learn and grow. And that nonsense needs to stop. Let me see. Welcome, Erie. And exactly, the stuff that the church has covered up, especially having both Protestant and Catholic families, makes my head hurt. And it's a part of a lot of stuff that people don't want to talk about. But if you're serious about changing society, you have to look at the ugly. One of the things that I've noticed whenever we talk about any of the isms, whether it's racism, sexism, homophobia, is always there's people that don't want to deal with the real. They want to believe in whatever crazy ass mythos they've created to keep that bubble they put around themselves safe. I had a woman earlier this week talking about town squares. Now, somebody who loves history, I learned early on that town squares wasn't just for trading and commerce. A lot of times, especially in early America and early England times, town squares were used for hangings, public executions, public humiliation, witch burning, and slave auctions. They were not the bastions of hope that little white women like to tell themselves because sadly, a lot of them have to believe in that myth of good. Even though they get the most abuse from the society, they turn the other cheek to it because they're adjacent to enough power to where they're like, eh. But if you look at the people who face the most damning lives, who have to go in the restaurants and stores and yell at low wage people because in their home they're not treated as equal at all, look no further than a white woman. And I had it out with one because she just kept going on about how those of us who actually study history, welcome to the chat, Theodora, and thank you for following. They just don't want to confront the fact that throughout history, our society has created hubs that, yeah, there might have been some good in them, but they also harbor great evil. And there are a lot of people that feel like talking about those evils somehow will make them feel guilty. Guilt is a good thing. You should feel shame thinking about harming, owning, any kind of enslavement of fellow human beings. But if that guilt makes you feel angry instead of working towards making sure we never go back into that way of society, you have a problem. I tell people almost every other day because I get it all the time. I feel ashamed about that. Okay. Are you going to continue benign bigotry? Because the shame doesn't matter to me, man. I don't understand why you would feel ashamed for knowing the past history. In fact, the more I learned about actual history, and I don't mean that garbage that they put in textbooks, the more I realized I don't want it to repeat itself. The more I realized how many human atrocities were legally condoned. and how we need to keep our eye on whoever we put in the power, because the people we put in the power will allow certain atrocity. So many of us don't want to think on that level, but we have to. We slipped 4 years ago. And when I say we, if you voted, I ain't talking to you. I'm talking to the ones who didn't think it mattered. I'm talking to the ones who thought, oh, enough will get out. It doesn't matter. We had kids in cages. We had a man die trying to get his daughter over a border to a better life. We committed human atrocities that were legal. You don't think what happened in 1930s Germany could happen in America? You're part of the problem, because it very nearly did. And we still don't know all the stuff that happened in those Trump camps. We do know that forced hysterectomies, we do know serious abuse happened, but we probably won't get the full report of everything just yet. So do not act like atrocities can't happen on our soil, because every single major human atrocity that has been documented throughout history was legally allowed. And the root of it is hate. So if we teach people to stop it, and I mean it on a fundamental level, we have to stop condoning gender hate. We have to stop condoning ethnic hate. We have to stop raising a society to compete against each other. I say it all the time when I look at my kids' schoolwork now. Now that they have changed the grading system to make sure that the kids are understanding what they're learning, take a lot less pressure off of them with these constant ridiculous tests, school has gotten a bit better, and they're able to pinpoint when my kid is stepping out of line. But the school is still nowhere it needs to be. And on a global level, our schools are still a place where learning feels mandatory and forced. Most kids don't enjoy school because when they go, they know they are being rated against other kids instead of going and getting knowledge given to them. But we're not ready to have those conversations because we are still being guided by a society that is ruled by hate, ruled by materialism, ruled by people who just don't seem to care if others are happy and just live, because they have based their power off of how many people are miserable besides them. We have to change the structure because we built our society on a foundation of fucked up ideology, and it's crumbling. It's why people are so quick to anger, because they feel frustrated. Life didn't give them what they were promised, especially white men. You see it a lot. They are told by society that they're the pinnacle, that life is supposed to cater to them. But what happens to those white men that aren't born of money, that have to struggle, but still have access to weapons? They get it in their head that somehow it's somebody else's fault, that they're not up there, that they're not the Bezos of the world. And then they take that anger out first on their spouses and their friends, and then on whoever else they can. And it's getting younger and younger. I seen a stupid article in the Wall Street Journal, I think it was the other day, where they interviewed a bunch of white guys that are saying how they don't want to go to college anymore. They feel left out of the conversation because for them, any school that moves towards inclusion, any school that doesn't center their feelings, is too much for them. They were graded on a curve that was held above everybody else. And now that that curve is being chipped away, they can't handle it. And that mental instability of being told that you're the pinnacle, but you're not allowed to feel emotion normally from it, causes that act out, causes them to fight and destroy. And it's just tiring to see how instead of working with our society, too many of them would rather burn it down. One of the things we see with the far left, their whole ideology is revolution because they seem to think that they could sit back, cause a whole lot of discord, let us all kill each other off, and then they'll make some kind of weird nerd utopia, which ain't gonna happen because most of them aren't smart. Most of their ideas come from anime and manga anyway. And I'm not knocking anime and manga. I love it myself, but a lot of these kids don't base their wants on reality. And it's sad because a lot of them get the idea of socialism. They just don't understand that socialism is supposed to incorporate everyone. There's no elites in true socialism. Everyone is collectively working together because socialism stole a lot of its core from actual tribalism. Tribes were our foundation. Tribes were where we started. They were groups of people looking out for each other, growing together, protecting each other. Thank you for that gifted sub to Deacon Fatal. But tribes were dangerous to people who wanted power. Tribes were dangerous to monarchies. Tribes could band together and protect each other. So, what was the best way to hold power? Destroy, assimilate, really relegate tribes to almost nothingness. And they did it strategically. They did it here in North America. They did it all over Africa. They did it in Asia. Anywhere groups of people, whether they were Mongols or Aztecs or any of the nations, first through all of them, they were systematically chased down and destroyed because people who wanted to keep us docile, people wanted to keep us enslaved. People wanted to make sure that women felt inferior to men and certain men felt inferior to other men, made sure that people who grouped together were separated. And that is what they continue to try to do with our society. Anytime groups band together and say, hey, we matter, we want our place, people fight against it. Anytime groups of humans decide, okay, F this, we're going to group together, we're going to form this, whether it's hippies or counterculture. I'm not saying that the counterculture movement was perfect. Trust me, I was raised by some. Thank you for the subscribe, Sedora. But a lot of them had the idea that working together, not being driven by materialism before they became yuppies, was the way to go. But that countered the narrative that you had to work a 9 to 5, be a cog in the wheel, make some rich guy richer. We've really allowed so much of the structured fuckery that it is going to be hard to change people's minds, but it's not impossible. Even with this microwave generation, even with Team Viral, even with the people who live their complete life digitally. In fact, I really feel that the digital revolution is going to be the best way to not only get tribes back, and when I say tribes, I mean it. I mean groups of people working together to educate, protect, look out for each other, to bring the reality that when you're born, that is a miracle in itself, but that nobody is perfect and that we are constantly working on ourselves. We need to stop holding ourselves to standards that was never meant to be. Telling a woman just because she is able to have kids that somehow that makes her less than, that somehow that makes her automatically a nurturer, when we have seen throughout history that women can be strategic, women can be leaders, and some women don't deserve or should be mothers. People aren't ready to have that conversation, but they need to because too many women are being forced to have kids, not stable enough to understand what their job is, and creating a whole society of people who are fucked up. I say it because I'm one of those people. I say it because I struggle not to be one of those people to my kid because of it. And it's because our society has condoned so many of these isms. So much unnecessary hate, so much unnecessary understanding. I don't believe that my mom wanted the life she had. Thank you for that, sweetie. I believe that she was pushed into a role that she didn't want. And because she was pushed into that role, she had kids. But her goal had been medicine. And I think she would have benefited kids a lot better as a pediatrician than she would have as a mom. But she gave up. And her fragility from it drove her to other things. It's what happens when society decides that your role in life is only based on your gender. We have to stop doing that. I see a lot of guys that go through that too, that think they have to make kids, even though they don't feel that desire to be a father. And if that is your inner voice, don't ignore that. There are plenty of people who really feel the need to be a parent or be a mentor without siring a kid. You do not need to spread your seed just because it's a natural ability to. We have to stop pushing that. And we have to start teaching people to value each other outside what you can get from them. But some people just ain't ready for that conversation. But you need to get ready because our world is changing. If you were born even 20 years ago, you have seen how fast this world has changed. You've seen a world that has technologically bloomed, but has bloomed in the ways of thinking, acting, and feeling. Exactly, Deacon. It really is. I say this as a mom. It is a struggle sometimes figuring out what I'm doing, trying not to make the same mistakes, and sometimes failing in that because I know how I was raised. I don't regret being a mom because by the time I made the decision, I wanted to be. But there are times I question what I'm doing. I know I have the instinct to nurture, but my own way. I know it's not what's considered the norm. I work with my doctor on that. But when I say that there are people out there that really, they honestly feel that that is not their place. And then people try to push them because, oh, you have a vagina, you have a womb, you should want to be a mom. That's not how that works. You're not bound by your biological structure. And I wish people would understand that. If that was the case, we wouldn't be able to reassign our bodies to be who we know we are. And that is why so many bigots try to argue against transgender. But you know what? Just because you don't understand it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. People know who they are. Just because you're not brave enough to look within yourself and understand who you are doesn't mean other people don't have that ability. That was something I had to learn. That was something I didn't know when I was younger. But when you're constantly growing, changing, listening, understanding that you don't know, but you want to, you realize that the isms can't hold you. You realize that hate is ridiculous and you do your part to chip away at it. And I swear to you, if enough of you start really self reflecting, start looking it in the face, and start doing it whether people notice you or not, we can make a difference. And that is the thing that I don't think people understand. Aw. Kitten. Aw. But there are people out there that really think they're allies. And I see a lot of people. It is. I don't understand why people think it's selfish. If you know yourself, if you know that it would be hard on you patience wise, if it would be hard on you health wise, if you don't have the emotional depth or empathy to raise a child, to me, I'd rather deal with a person like that than somebody who just pushes out a kid and then coldly raises them. The reason why I have my sociopathic tendencies is because I had a parent that did that. The reason why I struggle with sociopathic tendencies is because I had grandparents who tried their best to show me empathy. But I have that weird in between. And I wouldn't have had that struggle if I hadn't been born of people who didn't really want to be parents. I need people to understand that it is not selfish to understand that you do not want to take part in that. Plenty of people who don't have kids still help out children. Plenty of people who don't have kids still care about children. They just know they do not have the emotional capacity to raise them themselves. And we need to be more mindful of that. Self-reflection is very difficult, and it's tiring trying to explain to people that you need to do that if you want to be a better person, but especially if you want to call yourself an ally, because way too many people have done that. Way too many people will get into the face of a black person or a person of color or LGBT and talk about, I'm your ally. I'm very loud about your causes. But are you really listening? Because if you're talking over us, you're not an ally. If you're telling us that we need to look past certain things that harm us both mentally and physically, you're not an ally. If you think that, oh, I can just use this ableist or hateful talk against this person, it shouldn't matter. To me, that's not allyism. You need to address all the stuff that you used to condone, whether it's calling a neighborhood a safe neighborhood, not realizing that both gentrification and white flight are still ways that people are displacing other human beings from our neighborhoods, from our way of life. You can't just donate a coat or a can of food here or there and think that absolves you from the fact that probably not far from you is a whole ass neighborhood that you won't walk in at night because you seem to think that the people living there would somehow do you harm. Because you still look at people who look different from you as a threat. And until you face those demons, you can't call yourself an ally. When you live amongst people and you start categorizing them because it makes you feel like you've got brownie points. When you make friendships and then you go off and talk about, I'm friends with such and such, so I should have an opinion on this. I'm married to such and such, so I can tell you more than you who have lived that life. I literally seen some white lady try to tell people that Kim Kardashian had more right to speak on black issues because she has half black kids. Y'all got to stop that. Because she didn't say that, thank goodness. I think PR wise, she knows that would be stupid. I'm not saying she might not believe that, but I think she's smart enough not to put that out there in her own words. But to have white women think that simply being involved with a black woman, black man, or black woman for lesbians, to have white men who think being involved with black men or black women gives you some kind of leadership role to tell us our lives, to talk about our pain over us, or as that young lady who I had to correct wrote a paper on black feminism, tell me my life in a nutshell, y'all need to stop. Because all that energy you're doing trying to speak over or for us, you could be working on yourself. And you could be working on those relatives that you don't want to argue with. You want to sit at Thanksgiving, maybe grumble at each other as they have their MAGA hats on and their Trump Your Feeling shirts because you still accept them in your life. I done cut so many of my family out for way worse. Not even political things because they all vote Democrat, but they're pieces of garbage. But some of you will sit across the table from somebody who want to strip people from their human rights and dignity because it's easier to keep a fragile peace with a bigot than it is to keep the peace in your own home and keep them out. I get it. You like that illusion of family. You like that illusion of unity. And that's why I can't work with you. Until you're ready to shatter that illusion, you're no use to me. You'd rather amplify fake. And I can't trust people that amplify fake. I can't trust people that won't confront even those who have the same blood as you. If you're not ready for that painful truth, how can you be ready to help me combat an actual beast that is hatred? You're not ready. And a lot of you don't want to hear that. A lot of you are so used to being the center of everything, so used to society coddling you, so used to having only your voice heard, that when somebody like me tells you you're not ready, your first instinct is to fight. Your first instinct is to give me a damn list of your whole resume. Oh, I marched here and I did this there. But do you still condone your relatives? Some of you get really silent. And then the few used to go, well, no, I don't talk to them anymore. Mm-hmm. But you still have that friend. You still have somebody in your life that you tolerate because you like them for some reason. You don't like what they have to say about women or black people or LGBT or any of their hateful stuff. But there's something about them that you like and you can't let that go. You keep some kind of illusion in your mind that you need to keep them close. They're not trying to work on themselves. And you hold on to that relationship for some reason. You're not ready. It is painful to let go of people who are toxic. I know. I don't talk to a lot of people that I used to, people that I grew up with, people that raised me in ways. But I realized that their ignorance was an anchor. And until you're ready to cut those anchors from around your ankles, I'm not going to let you drag me down in the abyss with you. So if you're busy telling me that I'm your ally, but in the next few weeks you'll be sitting across that table because you have to have your big Thanksgiving from your MAGA aunties and MAGA uncles, from the people who seem to think that orange shit stain is going to run in 2024 and try to vote for him again, you're not ready to be an ally. And if you're another one, the one that still believes in magical grandpa, who really doesn't need to be running for president anymore because y'all are just as bad. You tend to think that you can say stuff like BLM, defund the police, all these little slogans, but do no actual work towards it. You seem to believe that a guy who has spent all his life ingratiating himself, who is just another independent, no size but his own type, can be our leader. Y'all are worse to me because at least an in your face bigot, I know what I'm getting up front. I know I'm not going to bother with them. Y'all like to slide in, act like your friends as you look down upon my skin tone, upon my gender, upon everything about me. And that's why I don't fuck with or trust you. You don't think we see the way you act, or especially around women. Misogyny is really strong within the left. And what makes it worse is the pick me types that think, well, maybe they'll treat me better because they don't really like women, but they'll listen to me, right? No, girl, they're not. And you're setting yourself up to be used. But you don't care because that adjacency to whatever supposed far left power is lucrative to you. Y'all need to just stop. Don't call yourself my ally if you're pushing another useless politician onto me who calls my life an identity politic, who calls my struggle something that can be dusted away with financial whatevers. It's always about money with that group. Always. And they don't seem to understand that the financial structure is one of the biggest causes of racism. Because most of the people who have power and that money don't want to share that. And they don't care. As long as they can keep us fighting with each other over our genders, over our looks, over what kind of faith we decide to indulge in or not indulge in, they keep the majority of the currency. And who says what currency has value? They do. But y'all ain't ready for that either. So, what I want people to do, if you really want to be better at stuff, if you really want to help, if you really want to be an ally, is to work on yourself. Because all of us have internal hatred. Whether it's internalized misogyny, internalized misandry, for those of us who get a little bit annoyed with men. We can't help ourselves, especially women. I know that throughout the ages, we have put up with men telling us that too much learning was a bad thing Any role outside motherhood was a bad thing. We have to let that go. We realize our worth and we have to keep pushing past that. And we cannot take the residual annoyance that we've had having to constantly prove our worth out on men. And men, y'all need to understand that you've got to stop living up to standards that were never set by anybody that's looking out for you. That whole idea that you have to be stronger, that you can't show emotional sensitivity, who you love, how you look, all of that has set you back. You need to be set free of those ridiculous constraints. Be okay with who you are. Because most men who are truly okay with who they are, they ain't out there causing strife and stress. They're not fighting with people. They're looking to make people out that are just as content with who they are as they are. And I know men like that exist. But they don't get any praise. They're not in it to be recognized. They're just doing their best to have a good life and make sure the people around them have a good life. And if that is you, I want you to know I see you. I know that it's hard because in this world, showing any kind of sensitivity or caring, you get called a punk. But I know you just don't care. I know that you grew up realizing that you are who you are and you're just going to be who you are no matter what. But there are a lot of people out there that they don't get that. They believe that they are in a race with other people and that their failure is somehow the end of the world. They are miserable people and they want everybody else to be miserable like them, or they get some kind of happiness off of seeing people miserable. And that's why I like people who realize early on that none of that stuff matters. I'm going to do me. I'm going to be who I need to be. I'm going to be there for people. And that's it. And there are so many of those people out there. You got like Chef Andre. I hear about him every other day and it makes me smile because he doesn't have to do that. He is a world renowned chef. He could sit back like some of those other celebrity chefs, make a whole bunch of Food Network TV shows, make that money. He is out there on the front lines. Anytime there is things that need to be done for homeless, for hungry, for storm victims. And I know some people are like, oh, he's doing it for attention. Those are those negative people. He does it whether there's a camera there or not, because that's just who he is. He loves to cook and he loves to share that with people. And when you have people like that, when they give off that light, nobody can diminish it. In music, you have musicians who do that. I look at Lil Nas X. For the longest time, people like him had to hide who they were. They couldn't express themselves creatively. And you see the backlash of those males who were raised toxic, trying to constantly take him down a peg or mock him. He's not going to let you do that anymore. Why? Because his music has transcended all your hatred, all your ideas on what makes a man, just like it did for Prince. Prince didn't let you tell him what his masculinity could be. And he got it from probably more women than some of y'all's asses will ever get to see. So I'm telling you right now, if you want to work with people like me on chipping away the isms, especially racism, you got to work on you. It really, really is that simple. And I think it's because it's that simple, thank you, dear, that a lot of people don't think they can do it. A lot of people don't want to do it. But you gotta understand that the only way we're gonna combat this is to work on you. You could try to convince other people, but people are fake. They'll smile in your face and say, oh, yeah, I hear what you're saying. I believe everything you're saying, and then go about their business. So the only person that can really help work on any of those bigotries is you. And you really have to self reflect. And if you're not willing to do that, if you're willing to believe that you're just a perfect being, you don't see color, you believe in gender equality, but some women just shouldn't dress this way, or some women or some men shouldn't do that, you're not ready. And I know it is hard for people to understand this because you want to believe in that I'm a savior. I'm good. People will listen to me. I can use my voice. But if you're not truly feeling the message that you're putting out there, that carries too. You can't say Black Lives Matter, but you can't say I'm for equality, but you have to believe in it wholeheartedly. And the only way you can do that is to purge all of these ingrained biases from yourself. And it takes time. And no one is 100% pure of it. That is how I know the people who say they're anti racist versus the people who are actually anti racist. That's how I know the people who are anti sexist, who are actually allies to people who are still being marginalized because they realize that they are not perfect. They are still unlearning stuff, but they are willing to unlearn and learn new things. And if that is not you, you are not ready. But if you want to be ready, nobody is stopping you. But you also got to realize that people are probably not going to be looking at you either. So if you're in it for accolades, if you're in it for a pat on the back, if you think you're going to make a name for yourself off of it, you're not ready either. Because those phonies and frauds, they crumple too. Those people who get off on black torture porn, showing us being abused by cops and making lucrative money from y'all's donations. Stop giving those people your money. They're not doing anything worthwhile. They're gathering your resources to further their lives. If they are not pushing for good things in their communities, if they're not using that money to open up schools, to feed people, to educate people, to get out the vote, you are wasting your time. I know a very well known person that's been doing that, that a lot of people give him money. And he has done nothing for the community. But he bought himself a very swanky home with your kind donations. So I need you to understand that your best bet right now, instead of trying to find some talking head to amplify, is to work on yourself. Because yeah, they're still giving that man money. He's trying to run the latest scam that he needs to move out of said Stranky house because his family's life's in danger. And people have been giving him money to move now. It is beyond ridiculous, y'all. And that's why I said I just want to educate people on the differences because so many people get bigotry, racism, and everything twisted. And it's easy for people like him to swoop in, say a bunch of fancy things, get you to donate to him on behalf of the people he's supposedly speaking for. But those people don't see that money. He's not uplifting people with that. He's uplifting his own pockets with your donations. And it's not going to the families that were ripped apart by hate. it it doesn't matter to him though, Cedra. It for him, it's all about how much he can get out of people. And I've warned people all the time, be wary of those who say they're activists but don't really have a line of activism behind them. That the only time you see them is when they're asking you for something. When the only time you see them is when they're on some celebrity thing, but you don't see them actually fight in the good fight. You see the people they back who also have a history of not doing much for anybody's community. They amplify emptiness because they realize that it's lucrative to keep the bigotry. It's lucrative to keep the racism. If they can make money off oppression porn, they're going to do it. We have to be exactly, Deacon. They are definitely ambulance chasers. They love when the news runs a story of one of us getting abused by the police or dying at the hands of legalized lynching. They put out their tweets and their articles and they get a bunch of people to donate to them, and those profits don't go to the families. So it's like I said, to stop them especially, we have to work on ourselves. We have to see how we condone social biases and racism, because we will put those guys out of jobs as well. But I'm going to get ready to wrap this up. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. I will have this up on YouTube within the next few hours. I really appreciate y'all tuning in. I will be back next week with all new Bonnet Chronicles, and we'll be on tomorrow probably for our next Gen X Cynics cast, where we'll talk geek things. But thank you all for tuning in. I'm going to go make dinner for Axiom and I, and you have a good one. Are you really gonna play it?
Yes.
All right.
Ooh, gem is adventure. Ooh, gathering glitter, fashion and fame. Gem is truly outrageous, truly outrageous. Whoa, gem, the music's contagious. Outrageous. Gem is my name, no one else is the same. Gem is my name. Little biscuits, our songs are bitter. We are the misfits, and we're gonna get her. Gem, the music's contagious. Gem is my name, no one else is the same. Gem is my name.